This is the Heroic Voice, where I talk to comic book creators, people I've worked with, other interesting people about the history of comics, superheroes, and the current state of the comic book industry. I also discuss current and upcoming projects, current events, and any other topics my guests might be interested in talking about. So subscribe and hit the like button. Help me grow this channel and promote indie comic book creators, publishers, and other people affiliated with the comic book industry. Your comments are appreciated. Get to it and leave feedback, good, bad, and otherwise. I am your host, Dennis Mallonee, writer, publisher of the Heroic Multiverse, where we spotlight good girls, bad girls, super babes, and superheroics in a classic, kind of golden agey style. Grab some snacks and enjoy. This is the Heroic Voice. Okay, it is July 6th, 2024. I'm here on the Heroic Voice with our League of Champions artist and other things that he's worked on, Henry Martinez. Very talented. Behind me, you will see a piece of Henry's work. This is one of the covers for the League of Champions source book. It's a role-playing game supplement featuring the League of Champions characters. But we want to talk about Henry, at least to start with, in this, who he is, what he's done, how he got interested in artwork, how he got into comics. So, Henry, tell us about yourself, please.
Oh, so boring, but okay. I fortunately discovered comics very early because my parents worked a lot. And we go to the local newsstand back in the day, and you'd grab comics from the rack.
The spinner
Yeah.
rack.
Yes, the spinner rack, which I miss dearly. I actually have one behind me that I found on eBay.
I have one. I have one that we take conventions with us
Okay,
sometimes.
great. Oh, I love it. But it's all I can afford back then as a 12-year-old was the Fantastic Four and Spider-Man. And that's what I had, and that's what inspired me. And as a kid, of course, Johnny Storm was my guy because he was the young, no, he's the closest thing to my age. So I got started there following those books until I can afford more. And then all of a sudden, John Byrne's X-Men exploded during what is it, when the direct market started?
72, 73, thereabouts.
Oh,
Maybe a little later.
I thought Byrne started in the early 80s. Cochran was the 70s.
Cockrum started
Yeah,
it. It was actually the mid 70s, and then
yeah.
Dave left and John took over.
John took over and it just blew my mind. I didn't really collect until then. And my friend and I at the time, actually, my childhood friend was Georges Janty, the guy who draws Star Wars now and Buffy the Vampire Slayer. We just grew up together. It was wonderful. We take a 1.5 hour bus ride to go to the comic shop to buy Byrne's X-Men. That was it. That's all we could afford. So that actually started me collecting, and Byrne can draw anything. So he blew our minds. And ever since then, I've been a big fan. The only book I've consistently collected until Jim Lee left, basically. Uh, and my parents have been very supportive, basically because, like I said, they worked a lot. So Henry can draw, so Henry's drawing at home, and I'm reading comics and I'm getting inspired. And they didn't even know the favor they did me, but they bought me a cheap little drafting table and a copy of How to Draw Comics the Marvel Way. And that was,
Ah,
I'm 13 years old, and I'm just like, oh, loved it, loved it. So Buscema was also a big inspiration. Um,
I
on a
see a lot
negative,
of their influence, both John and
oh,
John in
absolutely.
in your work.
And thanks. But unfortunately, I didn't get Jack Kirby back then. I didn't like him as a kid. The work was like clunky, and I just didn't get it. And I found out a lot of my peers feel the same way. I didn't appreciate Kirby, but then when I grew up, I really did appreciate his storytelling. Is
Well, you got into Jack toward the end of his
yeah,
and he
the end of his days.
wasn't doing as much. in the way of detail. The storytelling was still there,
Absolutely.
but the artwork was, how shall I put it, less refined
Yeah.
than it was in the 60s, and when he had the benefit of a few excellent inkers. Yeah.
Unfortunately, towards the end of his time at Marvel, I had friends that worked with her with John Romita on Romita's Raiders group,
Uh-huh.
and they would make fun of Jack behind his back. Unfortunately,
Yeah. Yeah.
they'd make copies of his work and pin it in the bullpen, and horrible comments. And it's like, oh, respect the guy.
Yeah, they didn't
No,
understand. Children, have very little, sometimes have very little perspective. But
yeah,
okay, that's how you got into artwork. How did
yeah,
you
supportive people.
how did you get into comic books? What was your first job? How did you get that?
Uh, it might have been you.
Really?
Well, this is the thing. You can't do this today so easily, but back then you drew your samples and you sent them out to everyone. And I wanted to get into Marvel, so every month I would produce work, and I knew back then the best way to get into Marvel is to have printed work. And actually, I would go publish. Sorry. Oh no, it was Personality Comics. They're a local Long Island company, and they had a line called Spoof Comics, which it was work, but it basically they took every male figure and made them girls, and a lot of TNA and a lot of
Yes, I vaguely remember that. Yeah.
yeah, and they did pretty well for the time. And then I got to draw superheroes. That was the bottom line. Whether it's TNA or not, it didn't matter. And then it had a local following. And then again, I'm submitting constantly, constantly. And I would go to the comic book shops, and I loved buying smaller independent books. I would always grab anything that caught my eye. And a heroic book caught my eye. I forget which one it was. So
Who
I
was in
sent
it?
samples out to you.
Who
Huh?
was in it? Who was in it? Do you remember who was in the book?
It might have been League of Champions, an old issue of League of Champions. It had a retro cover. I don't remember specific. I just know that I love the retro look, and it got my attention. I always, like I said, I grab a book, I bring it home, like, oh, this is great, and I send samples to you, and you got in touch with me pretty quickly, which is great. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, your
And
style, if I remember correctly, I was looking for an artist for Sparkplug because
yeah,
Scott Clark wasn't able to continue the book, and David Spurlock did he tried to do a good job with the story, but I
yeah.
wasn't satisfied with it, and it turned out David was not satisfied with it either.
Oh,
So yeah, I
do you
was
know what
looking.
happened? Do you know why he was like?
He
Was it
rushed
that?
it, he
Yeah,
yeah, and he never really explained it, but he did tell me later, some years later, that he would really like to redo that artwork
right.
because he was not happy with it. But
Good for me. Thanks, Dave. Sorry, that was terrible.
but your style at the time looked very similar to Scott Clark's style. It was clean, crisp, very pretty.
Yeah.
And I said, okay, let's give this Henry Martinez guy a chance to do, the Sparkplug story, which you pulled off very nicely. You did the remaining two issues.
I'll
And
tell you, that was to this day, that's still I think that's some of my best work, and we're talking a long time ago. Like I look back and I'm like, this isn't bad.
it was very nice. It was very nice. And it was, I think, years later before we got together again. And
Yeah,
by then your style had evolved. And I was sitting here, wait, is this the same Henry Martinez who did
yeah,
those Sparkplug issues? Because it looked kind of the same, but it was also structurally very different. There
yeah.
was in the early stuff you did, which was very pretty, right? You didn't have as much dynamism as you do in your artwork now, I think.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, and
Well,
to that extent, your work has evolved. It's much more dynamic.
hopefully an artist evolves. There are some from that era that haven't evolved at all, and it shows. And they're still working, which is great. But an artist should always grow and learn and evolve and incorporate. And I'm sorry, getting back to that style, that was intentional. The only reason I got work at Marvel is because I and many others were copying the Jim
Oh,
Lee, Rob Liefeld style.
uh-huh.
And Scott Clark, you can tell he was doing that too. He was getting work. I mean, obviously because he's a great artist, but there was a bunch of us that copied that style, and it was reflective in the work I have in those 3 issues of Sparkplug. And I kept working for a bit in that style, but it did evolve. I didn't want to be that guy forever. And even today, some people, older fans, are like, "Can you do a commission with the '90s style?" I'm like, "Sure, if that's what you want." But I also do other things, so
Other
that's
things.
what
What
that's.
else do you do? What
Oh
other
well,
projects have you worked on?
yeah, my style has evolved, but I don't put this out there too often because I don't get hired for it. But I'm a traditional painter, digital painter. I have a story in Heavy Metal magazine. I've done character design for fantasy role-playing games. I love fantasy work. I mean, I do it all, really.
What
If you
about
ask me
painted?
to, I'll do
Well,
it.
that brings up a question. I did not know this. What about painted covers? You want to do one of those at some point?
Absolutely. I'm actually working on one now, and it's rough stages.
No,
I'll send you.
for an issue of League of Champions, let's say.
Oh, absolutely.
Because I've got in mind, and we'll get to this, you're kind of working on a story that's a flashback to the Hellfire Crown sequence.
Love
And
that.
I have in mind, right, the evil demon master sitting there surrounded by a bevy of champions girls.
Oh, that sounds great.
And I'd love to, if you want to do that,
Sure,
we should do that as a painted cover. I'm
we'll do
thinking
some
it's
roughs.
Tales of the Champions 69.
Oh my, you went there, didn't you?
Yeah,
Okay.
that would be the issue I want to put it on.
I'm in, my friend. No problem. I'll send you
Okay.
samples. Like I said, I really should put that out there more. But yeah, I paint.
You should
Uh,
put that out more.
yeah,
There's
yeah.
another artist, Paul Abrams, who was our original Tigress artist, right?
Mm,
Does paintings now, and he's done a lot of painted covers. You've seen them on issues of the Champions titles,
right.
and they look really nice.
Oh,
Paul
that's
is
good
a
to know.
wonderful draftsman.
Yeah.
He has the same kind of style that you do, right? That pretty, you know, I don't know how you describe that. It's
I
picture
mean, you could just
perfect,
say clean,
clean.
slick. But
Yeah.
a lot of people don't like that. But those that do, I'm here for you.
Mm.
And if you want something more realist, I can do that. Getting back to influences real quick, my style's grown. I try to incorporate people that I love. Like I've been a big fan of Barry Windsor Smith, so I'm trying to do his ink work.
Oh,
Um,
good luck with that.
yeah, I know
Barry's such a draftsman.
he is, and I have black and white printed pages, and I keep them by me sometimes. He's just amazing. If I pose this question every once in a while to fellow artists, I go, if you can pick one artist whose style you could do or have for the rest of your life, who would it be? And I always select Barry Windsor Smith
Always.
because he can draw anything,
That's
and
true.
he grows, and he's elegant, and his influences, classic painters, pre-Raphaelites, I think they're called. But yeah, it, if I can draw like him for the rest of my life, I'm fine with that.
What about other comic book work? I started to get to that, but we got
Oh yeah, I'm
sidetracked.
sorry. So yeah, right after Heroic, right after we lost touch, um, Kirk Lindo had a company named Brainstorm Comics, and he has a very popular character named Vampiratica was the name of the book. And she was a very voluptuous, sexy vampire. And the thing that made her stand out was this very unique rendition that Kirk would do of her hair. And it was this huge and a pain in the ass. Can I say ass on the
I think
podcast?
so. Yes.
Okay. And so I did a 3 issue thing for him. But he went out of business, unfortunately. Again, nice tight work, and I grew even more. I think at that point I was trying to incorporate more. Travis Charest, who's an amazing artist, he's kind of off in Europe right now. Anyway, then after that, I was doing work for you on and off when we got back in touch. I did a project that won't be out, I don't think, till next year with Mike Barron, writer and co-creator of Nexus. If you folks are familiar with him, we did
Everyone knows Nexus, I think. I
a,
hope.
okay, good. So Mike's a wonderful guy, and I was hot. Mike recommended me to be the artist on this science fiction book that's supposed to be out this year, hopefully. And it should do well. Mike's name's attached. The guy is bringing in uh, investors, so that's done. I just can't share it yet, but
Okay.
it's a couple of
It's
little things going on.
premature.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you ever, you said back when you started, you were aiming at Marvel and DC.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry.
Did you ever get any work with them? I don't remember.
Yeah, that's where I got my big hit, I guess. Marvel was really nice in that they gave me they like to test you out, which you should do. I did a fill-in for Mobius. No, Morbius the Vampire. It was really big back then. It was part of the Midnight Suns line of horror books that Marvel had at the time. So I started off fill-in issue for Morbius. Then, because of that, I was hired to work on Ghost Rider Blaze Spirits of Vengeance,
Hmm.
which Andy Kubert, or was it Adam Kubert, just left, and I got to finish up the run, which is great. They knew the book was going to end. Then they put me on a #1 book with Larry Hama called Blaze, which is basically Johnny Blaze trying to live his life, and his kids are kidnapped. So the whole 12-issue storyline was about Johnny trying to get his kids back.
Did
It,
he end up marrying Roxy? I don't remember the storyline.
no,
Was it?
unfortunately, I haven't followed the book since then. But Marvel, that's when the bubble burst
Yeah.
and almost everything was canceled. But I got to work on a steady run and I proved my chops. I proved that I can do a monthly book and not be late. I was never late. Actually, I've never been late in my whole career unless you know something otherwise that maybe I've been late with you.
I cannot say otherwise.
So at the end, I went back to advertising. I was doing advertising storyboards for that's how I made my living. And just to share with the people out there that are aspiring artists, you got to put in the work. I was working full time in an ad agency, sometimes weekends and late nights. I'd go home and work on the comic books, including yours. And I'd stay up till 3 in the morning because they had to get done, sleep maybe 2 or 3 hours, get up at 6 and go back to work and do the whole thing over for about 2 months. I couldn't do it anymore. That's when I said adios to advertising and jumped in full. Marvel said yes, so yeah, I went right in there until the bubble burst, and then unfortunately, it's been hard to get back because their styles changed completely. I,
Completely, yeah. I
I have
remember
noticed right
the a brief period of time when I was actually doing some writing for Marvel. It was a good time.
on what? I
Yeah,
didn't know.
there were some people there that I had good relationships with.
You know,
Not so much anymore. It's
the relationships, so they're not there anymore.
they're not there anymore, with a couple of exceptions. There's still a couple
No,
of people there
that
that
hurts,
I
right?
know. But
We
it's
lost so many good people,
yeah.
unfortunately.
So if people are looking for your work now, I mean, aside from Heroic Publishing, which features Henry Martinez on a regular basis, where should they be looking for it?
Well,
Is there
comic book
anything else you're
wise,
doing?
no, comic book wise, Heroic Publishing, and I don't know if I've said this enough to you privately, but I love the characters. I get to draw superheroes. How wonderful is that?
Do you have a favorite of all of the characters? Is there one in particular that you like?
You know,
Because we got to do a poll. I mean, Mark Beecham suggested that we poll our readership and find
all
out
right.
who their favorite characters are. I mean, we did
Wow,
that. Well,
that's
anyway, I'm digressing.
no,
What's
no, it's fine. I want to hear. Well, I want to hear about this before I answer
Well,
the
we did
question.
a poll way back at the beginning when we first started publishing, right? Who
Um,
was your favorite champion? And my expectation was, I've told this story before, that the Huntsman would win. Okay, he's the guy with the guns, right? But it
Right.
turned out that it was Flair by more than a 2-1 margin, which surprised me.
Oh,
Honestly, it surprised me because we'd already put a marksman was what we were calling him back then. We'd already had a marksman book underway with Steve Perrin doing the writing, right?
right.
But when Flair won the poll, hold on a second here. Okay, we'll publish it, but we'll also do a Flair book, right? And that's how Flair got started.
Oh,
And
I
sure
see.
enough, when we published that first issue, at 275 at a time when comic books were 75 cents,
Oh,
right?
man.
And it just sold out everywhere. right?
Yeah.
And that's when I knew that we had something special. Although I've never had the resources to be able to capitalize on it the way it should have been capitalized on, but we're still plugging away. But back to my question, who is your favorite character?
I don't know if this will surprise anyone, but you would think also, yeah, the marksman, but no, the enchantress.
Black Enchantress?
I'm sorry, black enchantress. Yep.
Yeah,
Really, her personality, her her outfit, I just love her. I love drawing her. I love the Black Enchantress.
she's an evil little witch. But
But I don't see her as evil. To me, she's fun, but yeah,
she is, right?
I'm reading in the script. Oh
She'll
wow, yeah, she's a
she'll
little
kill you with a
fun.
smile, right? The thing is that, well, we'll get into that later, but there are situations where the Black Enchantress will do things that the other champions will not do, right?
Mm.
But you got to be careful with that because, if you're actually a villain and you're trying to do, let me see if I can explain this, right? She is not a nice person. She's fun. She's adorable. She's lovable. She's really cute, right? But she if she needs to, she'll cut your head off.
Oh, I haven't gotten to that yet.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks for letting me know.
So,
I'll keep an eye out.
but I agree with you. She's a wonderful character.
And Mark seems to like her. He draws her really well every chance he gets.
Beecham, Mark Beecham, yes.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Mark Beecham.
Uh-huh.
And he draws her as a woman, but I always saw her and I started off drawing her
There she
this way.
is.
There she is. I love you. But I know the first time I drew her, well, I think it was for a League of Champions issue. And she's arguing with her dad, I think. And I just saw her, oh, look at this sweet little girl.
Yeah, she's
Um,
she's she's little and she's
oh
cute.
yeah, yeah.
She likes being little and cute.
So
Right.
that was my introduction to her. So I was like, oh, I love this girl very much. But yeah, Beecham draws her very sexy. I never saw her sexy. I just saw her, like you said, fun, cute. Now that I know better, I'm like, oh, okay.
The thing is that she's flat chested, right? And
Which actually, I love that part.
and she's got wide hips, right?
Sure.
She's like a bottom down kind of girl.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's how Mark draws her sexy, right?
Right.
Mark draws her sexy because he actually puts that emphasis on that lower body when
Yeah.
he draws her and the impish nature of the girl, right? She's
Yeah,
she's the yeah, yeah.
so that's my character.
That's your character. Well, we got to get a Black Enchantress story for you to do then.
Ooh, that'd be cool.
Yeah.
Actually, I've grown quite fond of I'm drawing a blank. Ice Star.
Ice Star, the guy?
Did I get that right? Yes. Ice
Yeah,
Star, right?
Ice Star.
Sorry, I'm
This
drawing so
guy,
many characters. It's hard.
this guy over here.
Yeah, that guy.
That guy.
I've had a lot of fun drawing him too, you know. So I
Well,
get
iStar is
he's a
brash,
type.
impetuous. He says he's in the superheroics for the babes, right? Even though it
Yeah,
turns out that he actually is a hero, right? But
yeah,
that's the attitude that he projects, right? He's
well, I really enjoyed his role in that Kansas story where, he's obviously trying to be a leader, but then all this chaos is going around.
You're talking about the crossover story that we did
Yes.
with Derek Gross's
Yeah.
Reiki Warriors, where they are in Kansas, which has devolved back to the Jurassic era. Uh, yeah, so they've got dinosaurs to fight and Korean wizards to fight, and
That was crazy
it
fun.
was a fun story.
And
Sadly, Derek is no longer with us, so we won't have any more of those. Even
we're
though,
gonna finish his story that he started, you said, right?
yes, yeah, the one that he started, which is going to segue into the origin of Moonwraith, which is another character you say you love.
Yeah, I do love actually.
Yeah,
Thanks for reminding me. I do love drawing him.
yeah, he is the arch enemy of Nightwind, a barely competent sorcerer who uses moon magic and relies on artifacts to boost his power level.
Hmm.
Right. And there's a whole backstory to him that we'll get into in this story that you're going to finish that Derek started. But I don't want to give any of that away yet. Suffice it to say that he used to be a member of the League of Champions.
Can't wait.
Yeah. So, okay, what would you like to talk about now? Let's get into your personal stuff here. Any history
Person.
of comics,
Okay.
reflections on the industry, stuff that you have on the drawing board that you'd like to do that you've never been able to do? What
I've
what?
got plenty to say, but I do want to keep my career. No. Um, the industry, I probably sound like an old fogey here, but I'm slightly disappointed in the style that, let's say, Marvel, for instance, has chosen to do, which understandably it's pretty work, and it's a European influence, but it's just line work now, and a lot of artists unfortunately rely too much on the colorist, the solid line work, the variation. There are no blacks anymore in the inks. I like adding weight. That's why I still render black. I still render because you shouldn't rely on anybody. Colors are doing beautiful work, but a lot of artists I know are already drawing with that in mind. They'll say to themselves, I'm just generalizing, but they'll say, well, the colorist is going to really make it pop. But let's say there's a black and white edition, then what? You basically have a coloring book, right? Just
Yeah,
learning.
yeah.
You get my point there?
Yeah, I understand your point. There needs to be a sense of solidity to it, three
Yeah.
dimensions, right?
Weight.
If you're drawing two-dimensionally, then you might as well, as you say, make a coloring book because
Yeah.
that's what it turns out to be with some excellent colorists, right?
Oh, absolutely.
But
And
a coloring book.
and I get why Marvel's doing that. Also, they're paying all these guys are from Brazil and uh Singapore, Vietnam, and they'll pay them, let's say, $75, but they can support their entire family and buy a house on that. So
Sure.
why not go to good artists, that you don't really have to spend a lot of money on? Unfortunately, that puts a lot of American artists out of work. You can't make Most of the people I know can't earn a living today because all the work's being outsourced. So
I've run across that myself, and I'm not going to say names here, but there's a very fine colorist who wanted to do some work with me, but I just couldn't afford to pay his rate for the coloring.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
get it. It's business.
yeah.
And like for instance, I think I've thrown this name at you. I wanted to work with a specific inker, but he was just too expensive and he wasn't willing to budge. And for me, it was more of an opportunity to say, hey, I get to have this legend ink my work, and I can look back and say, well, that's wonderful. But his rate is high, and I get it. He's got to earn a living, so that never happened. If I could, I'd pay him myself just to do like a couple of pages.
Any wish list projects, characters that you've never drawn that you'd love to draw, aside from the Fantastic Four and Spider-Man?
Oh, I was never. Now I'm not a Spider-Man fan like I was when I was a kid, just because it was fun. But yeah, the FF would be great. I just love them. That dynamic was just a family of superheroes, and they're fighting all the time. Just classic. Unfortunately, like I'm very limited in my ability to see how I consider myself a writer also, but I always thought, how the heck do you keep a character interesting? Let's use Spider-Man, for instance, for like 200 issues, and it still feels fresh. That's huge. That's an incredible feat, but he's still
I
around.
I can tell you how you do that. You introduce novel situations every so often that he has to react to in Peter Parker's personality.
Yeah.
New situations, variations on old situations. That's how you keep it fresh. Throw new things at him. But you mentioned that you were writer as well. You should try your
Well,
hand.
not professionally, but I do write, and I have four projects that I want to get out there, but it takes money. So I'm gonna have to pick one and hopefully do a well, I'm gonna do a
You're going
Kickstarter.
to do a Kickstarter.
Yeah, I'm
How do
definitely
people
do a
follow
Kickstarter.
you? You've got a Facebook page, something like that?
Yeah, I do, but unfortunately, I don't have that info in front of me right now. But can I share the links at the end or shoot you an
Just say it.
email?
We'll figure it out.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm on Facebook. You can Henry Martinez at the Henry.Martinez Facebook. You just look up my name there.
Okay. Any other avenues that people use? You have
I
artist
have
portfolios?
Instagram. but I can't use. I don't. My name's been taken, so
Oh,
I think it's I don't want to. I don't want to give you false information.
don't worry about it.
But my links are in Facebook, so
Yeah,
that's.
you can
Oh, I'm
find them
sorry,
there.
and I have a website. Silly boy.
You have a
Uh, the website is www.dragonbrushstudio, dragonbrush.com.
cool. Okay. And you can also see what Henry's up to for us by going to the Heroic Publishing website at heroicmultiverse.com. Right. You're working on League of Champions stories. You've got Huntsman, a story that's going to go into an issue of the Huntsman that you're working on
Yeah,
that I mentioned earlier. That's a flashback to the Hellfire Crown sequence. And we get a cameo of the Winter Wonderlass in there.
yeah,
Uh, and we're going to be introducing Target Girl, the female counterpart to the Huntsman there
yeah. Looking
during the
forward to
course of the
drawing
story.
her too.
Yeah.
I'm having
Um,
a lot of fun. I really enjoy working with you. I just want you
is
to
there any character in the Heroic Publishing universe that you haven't drawn that you would like to draw?
know. Ooh, good question. You know, two that caught my eye. I don't know their name because I saw them. They look kind of like playing card characters. There's like almost like a king looking and a jack looking character.
You're talking
And
about Roy Thomas's King's Gambit character.
yes, that's not.
Yeah.
Is that? I know that falls under the heroic banner, but they're not heroic characters. Is that
No,
right?
they're owned by Roy and Dan Thomas.
Oh man, I
But
just the
you should get
look.
in touch with Roy. Tell him you'd like to draw a King's Gambit story.
Is Roy in hiding after the controversy over Wolverine, or?
I doubt it.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I know he doesn't. He doesn't hide.
He doesn't care.
Um, well, I haven't. I thought I drew everybody so far. I have to look at the comics again.
Yeah, those were in issues of Captain Thunder and Blue Bolt.
Those guys too. Is that Roy's stuff?
That's Royce. That those
Man,
characters all belong to Roy and Dan. So you'd have to. But now that I think about it, we do have that 13th issue of Captain Thunder and Blue Bolt that we've never been able to get done.
yeah,
Maybe I should talk to Roy about having you do that.
I can't think of any. You better than I. Yeah, I would love to.
Okay,
But
well, I'll look into that. We'll find out. We are
you
running
first,
up.
my friend.
We are running up against our. Well, it's not really a hard and fast limit, but I want to keep these, 30 minutes or so. Any last words here? I'm going to say that you are a joy to work with.
Thanks.
You always do the story well.
Thanks.
The only criticism that I would offer, and I'm going to say this right to your face,
I can handle anything, I think.
move the camera around a little bit. You always seem
Oh,
to have
that's a
have
criticism.
you always seem to have close-ups, not your camera. I'm talking about the camera for your artwork, right?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Alternate long shots, right? Give us some depth, right? You don't have to be close up on the characters in every panel.
You got it.
Okay. What
As
about
a matter of fact, today, I was looking at the script, and there's a conversation going on
Mhm.
between the main characters in the OR, and I thought I should pull back on this
Yeah,
because I don't have to see their mouths. So yeah, I already have in mind. Thank you, and
excellent. Excellent. Two great
you're
minds.
gonna get a couple of pullbacks, silhouettes. I got to do more silhouettes because it helps the storytelling. We
Yeah,
don't need to. I don't need to put excuse me, every detail. So yeah, you're getting that, my friend. All right.
excellent. Any last thoughts from you?
Um, just it's been a pleasure working with you and being here. Thanks so much. And I look
Well, you're
forward
going to have
to.
to come back again, right?
I would love to. And
Okay.
I again, I know I said this before, but it's a pleasure, and I love working on the characters. And hopefully there will be plenty of more stuff we can do together in the future. And hopefully we can do some painting, or I'll send
Yes, I want that painted cover for Champion 69.
you. Got it, my
I'll
friend.
send you the details of what I have in mind.
That'd
And
be great.
all right.
Finally, we get to talk. This is wonderful.
Yeah, face to face, sort of. Thank you.